Hey Shibidoodles, how are you doing? Well, in my last video I was talking about the difference between illustration and fine art, and I was talking about it because I've been contacted by a fine artist who'd been trying to do children's book illustration, was getting themselves in such a mess, and the main reason they were getting in a mess was because they earn their income from their fine art. And they felt they should be earning money, a living from illustration. And basically, you've got to start again and start all over. It's like spending years and years and years learning to be a scientist, and then saying, "Oh, I decided I'm going to go and be a trampolinist now, a professional trampolinist." And it's such a different thing. You have to kind of completely stop one income stream and start another, and learn all over again. Which is fine if that's what you want to do, and it's fine if you've got some other income stream that is going to support you to do that. But if you're a professional artist and you are earning your living from your art, you can't afford to do that. And sometimes you need somebody to tell you, stop, don't do it. I wasn't being cruel, I wasn't critiquing, I was answering the question that I've been asked. And in fact, the artist that contacted me said they'd actually come to exactly the same conclusion in the time it took me to make the video. But it threw up lots of other kind of things in the comments. First is from It's DK. Good sir, may I inquire, what is the difference of application of fine arts and illustration? Well, there we go into a huge, great minefield, and that kind of really depends on where your personal view. That's what it all comes down to. Kind of officially, then fine arts is really a more kind of intellectual and aesthetic kind of thing, and applied arts is. Can you hear a pigeon out there? Applied arts are kind of more practical. So anything from putting a picture on a mug to painting a cathedral or something like that. Now I would split it down into two other things. There's applied arts and there's fine arts. There's kind of practical, aesthetic and intellectual. I would split those two kind of things down again into professional and non-professional. Now this is not putting down amateurs or non-professionals or putting professionals up above anybody else. It just means that professionals earn their living from what they do. They're making money. They need to make money from what they do to pay their rent, to pay the mortgage, to feed the kids. Okay, it's a day-to-day struggle. Other people go to work and they get a paycheck at the end of the month. Artists scramble all the time, think, what can I do next? What can I do next? How is this going to sell? And you have two different mindsets in that. The fine artist is exploring the aesthetic and the intellectual, and the fine artist is quite often totally removed from the practicalities of earning a living, and so they will get a gallery and whatever, an agent who kind of does it all for them and says, right, you just keep producing this, keep producing that, and I'll sell it for you. A decorative artist, which can be anything from a graphic designer to a cartoon person, whatever, might well be employed, but if they're not, then they are having to keep coming up with new ways, new ideas, and selling those ideas. They may well have an agent as well who is going to sort of take all that business stuff off their minds, to give them the time to do the creative stuff. Some people quite enjoy the business side of it, quite enjoy the hustle and the hassle, and do the whole thing themselves. And I'm a bit like that myself. I quite like sort of hustling. I quite like coming up with ideas and trying to sell the ideas to people. So when I get an idea for a book, nowadays I might try that on Kickstarter and see if I can sort of get some enthusiasm that way, or I put together a proposal and I go to a publisher and I say, what do you think of this, and try and sell the idea to them, and we sort of work then in partnership to actually physically create a book. Let me go through some of these other comments. So immediately Maureen Starkey says, It's easier for an illustrator to adapt to fine art, I believe, and illustration is storytelling. And that is exactly the thing about illustration. It is storytelling. That is what makes it different from all other arts. It's about telling a story. Anyone can adapt. I don't see that there's a problem there. But in the case I was talking about last week, someone was earning a living here and thinking maybe they ought to be earning a living over here. But if you've got to feed the kids, forget it. It's a practical decision. If you've got the time to dabble about and spend 2 or 3 years sort of exploring and experimenting, then that's great. If you got to pay the rent, keep doing what you're doing and get better at it and sell more. What else have we got here? Hello, Rael. I love your videos. Enjoyed your technical comparisons. I don't think an artist should ever discourage another artist not to delve into another medium. I would never do that. But but that's great if you haven't got to pay the rent at the end of the week. I was talking about a practical decision. And I think this is the whole kind of problem with art, is that, in one moment I feel it myself, it's all about art. And when I start an idea, I'm there and my head is exploding. There's little fireworks going off and it's all about inspiration and stuff. It is fantastic. And that's what art is all about. And that's the 1% of art. The 99% of art is the hard graft of actually getting down and doing it, drawing, rehearsing, practicing, designing, just really getting it right and producing something at the end that says what you want to say and satisfies your need to express, but also says something that other people can understand, and something that people actually want to have a look at. There's no point producing stuff that people just don't want to look at and can't be bothered about. So you're saying it defeats the whole purpose of art. Well, if we just stuck to what we know, none of us would ever get better. I'm not saying that at all. So, develop, but don't suddenly stop your income stream to start something else that may never work. I'm talking about professionals earning a living. Bonjour Stoltz sort of says the same thing and sort of felt to her that I was making fun of the person who contacted me. I wasn't at all. I was trying to help them out of a business problem. Why not advising how to tell a story, how to start? Maybe gouache is... I haven't got time to do a whole university course in a video, basically. You say, I love watercolour. Since the year I've been tackling the beast gouache. And I love and hate it from the bottom of my heart. I hate gouache. I used to use it and I cannot stand it, and it is a struggle, and I don't think it's really a medium worth wasting your time on personally. But you learn so much and improved your skills as an artist, but that's great. So you talk to a person who's being vulnerable down, not a nice thing to do. Hope you're more considerate next time. You can say what you think without smashing someone into the ground. That wasn't what I was doing. I was giving somebody sensible business advice. Ku Yang. So I'm going to slightly agree with you, but not completely. Make it sound nearly impossible to transfer skills from the fine arts to the illustration. Skills are completely transferable. There is no problem with that. If you can draw in fine art, you can draw in illustration. It's a completely different thing, telling a story to presenting an image. And it's a completely different thing to telling a story to sort of exploring colour effects and landscape and things like that. They are just totally different things. The skills are the same. You're still using the same paintbrush, you're still using the same medium, but the intention and the execution are entirely different. And it's not the skills, it's the temperament of the artist that is different. And trying to be someone else that you are not is generally going to end up in trouble. Now you say portraiture is portraiture, but you make it seem like fine artists are only capable of creating these types of work. That is what fine artists do, right? What about guys like Caravaggio, whose works are incredibly dramatic? Caravaggio was an illustrator. He worked in a very, very different time. If Caravaggio was alive now, he would be an illustrator. In those days, That's what illustrators did. They painted huge, great canvases telling stories. Caravaggio told stories in enormous canvases, lots and lots of people, history canvases. And if you look at the history of fine art, there is actually a pecking order of fine art, and history painting comes right at the top. Nobody does history painting now. Those people are now illustrators. So I'm not saying that illustration is at the top of the pecking order, but Rembrandt would now be an illustrator. He wouldn't be a fine artist because he liked telling stories, and he loved doing portraits, but he loved putting those portraits to tell stories. So you can a portrait artist is trying to express about that person, whereas an illustrator will do portraits, but they're telling a story using that person. And yeah. So perhaps my definition of art differs from yours. So whenever I hear the term fine art, I immediately think of drawing, painting, sculpting, architecture, etc. Fine artist has the ability to draw from their imagination as well as their surroundings. Exactly, but those are skills. And those skills are directly transferable, and we use exactly the same materials, we use exactly the same skills. It's the temperament of the artist that is different. Samuso 86 says, I keep meaning to give illustration a go because my line and wash style, but I keep getting absorbed in sketching and wondering if I should stop drawing from observation and start drawing from it. Why? It's what you love doing. So, if you're a professional, if you're actually earning a living from sketchbook kind of work, why do you want to stop that? Concentrate on that, get better. As it's a business, and you get better and better and better at doing it. And if you're not, and that's what you want to make a business of it, keep doing it, and you'll get better, and you will eventually make a business of it. Wanting to stop something that you love to go and do something that you feel you ought to maybe be doing that isn't quite, you. Why? But I kind of understand that if you've got time and if you're not doing it as a job and you've got to pay the rent at the end of the month, I can understand that you might think, that would be a really interesting thing to explore. I do it myself. I give myself a certain amount of time to explore new things. But every now and then I have to go, whoa, that's enough. I've got to carry on and earn a living. So if illustration's not coming naturally to you, and every time you start doing it, you find yourself going back, that's trying to tell you something. Calvin Zero says, maybe that artist should try gouache. It's similar to acrylic, so maybe it would be an easier transition. Silke Schumann says, I don't think technique is the issue. I don't see a single reason why you can't illustrate in acrylics. Acrylics come in opaque and translucent colours. They come fluid and thick, but then watercolour comes translucent and thick and liquid and thick. There's aquarelle and gouache in the It's not about the materials. Yes, you can illustrate in acrylic. You can illustrate in anything. You can illustrate in egg tempera. There was one guy who used to do these beautiful egg tempera illustrations. Beautiful, beautiful. If you are a professional, this is what it comes down to. It is a business. Okay, watercolor is really fast. It dries really quickly. It's flat, it scans beautifully, and that's why it works so well. Acrylic is thick and impasto. You can water it down and then make it really thin, but then why not use watercolour? Gouache is a complete nightmare, and just because it is water-based, it doesn't mean it is watercolour. Watercolour is a particular style, and it's particularly suitable for graphic work that is going to be scanned and put into books. It's just the way that is. You can use acrylics. You can use whatever. You can use potatoes and chips, and people illustrate with sort of film sets and all sorts of things. But they don't reproduce very well, and particularly in children's books, there is a kind of an understanding of what an illustration looks like, an expectation. If you're painting an illustration on a big canvas, it's really hard to photograph it really well so that it will reproduce well. And that is the thing it's about. It's the difference. It's the difference between doing it for fun and doing it as a professional. And watercolour is fast and it's quick and you can just get on with it. Line and wash means that you can increase your output and therefore sort of make a reasonable living at it. If you're spending hours and days and weeks on a huge canvas, no one's going to pay. Fine art, applied art, professional, non-professional. Professional just means that you're a business, you're making a living out of it. Non-professional means you can do whatever you like. Well, I hope that wasn't too much of a rant. Well, I hope that wasn't too much of a rant. And if you completely disagree with me, put your comments in the box below and maybe I'll make another video and chat about anything that comes up from that. Make sure you are subscribed and keep coming back to the Shu Renner Drawing channel. And in the meantime, keep drawing. Practice. I'll see you next time. Drawing is the basis of it all.